In 2010, award-winning journalist Michele Norris started the Race Card Project, where she asked people around the world to send her a postcard and in just 6 words, share their thoughts, questions, experiences, and aspirations about identity and race. The result was astonishing. The responses were vulnerable, honest, and revealing. And she compiled many of the postcards into a new book called Our Hidden Conversations, What Americans Really Think About Race and Identity. And Michele Norris joins us now. Welcome back to the NewsHour.
It is great to be here.
The Race Card Project for you has been a 14-year pursuit. How have the submissions tracked this country's racial journey over that same period of time?
Well, when we started this in 2010, we were 2 years into the administration of our nation's first Black president. And we were having a discussion as a country at that time about America being post-racial. So there was sort of a whoosh of hope in the air. And a lot of the submissions at the beginning reflected that. Only one race, the human race. Can't we just all get along? But over time, the cards got deeper, and people started to share some of the things that the viewers saw in the introduction. Reason I ended a sweet relationship, I'm only Asian because it's convenient, or when it's convenient. White, not allowed to be proud. And what we realized pretty quickly a couple years into this is that it was a little bit of a divining rod. Like, you could track things that were happening in the news or in society. They would show up in the inbox. So Trayvon Martin, for instance, the killing of Trayvon Martin, that did not become national news for weeks after he was killed in Florida. We were starting to see stories about people talking about an America that no longer felt comfortable to them or familiar to them in ways that we hear now, for instance, at far-right political rallies. You know, that language that has been almost normalized. We were starting to see it early on in the inbox. So as a journalist, it was not only interesting, but it was a very useful tool for trying to understand what was going on in America, you know, outside of the headlines, what was going on in really personal spaces in people's lives.
Yeah. You know, conversations about race in this country are so often trapped in the black-white binary, but this book breaks free of that. It reflects a real panorama of race, class, age, background. What stories stand out to you, and did you pick up any through lines, any points of connection among people?
There were certain through lines. The patterns themselves tell a story. It's actually the name of a chapter in the book.
Right.
Because we see a lot of people sometimes asking the same thing, sometimes saying the same thing. We have hundreds of cards from women of color who say, you're pretty for a fill in the blank. You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. You're pretty for an Indian girl, or something like that, written in 6 words. And so you see that sometimes people are all climbing the same hill, struggling with the same things. But the other thing that's interesting to me, Geoff, is that not only do the cards reveal patterns, they reveal the way America is sometimes in conversation with itself without even knowing it.
In what ways?
So some of the cards feel like they're in conversation. Like, you know, someone writes in about mugged by Black teens' trust destroyed. You know, you get cards that people are talking about their fear of people of color. And then you get cards on the other side that fall into some version of, lady, I don't want your purse. You know, and so a card that came in, I'm not intimidating, you are intimidated. And so it's almost like a conversation that people are having across difference, across some sort of chasm. And sometimes it happens in ways that, did these two people just talk to each other? And then there are cases where people actually aren't talking to each other, but they're talking to me. In the book, there are examples. There's a really interesting story about a couple. She's white, he's Iranian. They send in cards to the Race Card Project after listening to a segment on National Public Radio. They don't know that they've each sent in the card, but I recognize she's talking about her husband. And years later, I interview the two of them, and they're like, you sent in a card too?
Yeah. You know, in the book you explore whiteness, which is interesting because whiteness in this country is so often seen as the default, or as you say in the book, the normative identity. There are a number of submissions that fall along these lines. There's one card that says, being white is not a crime. It's okay to be white. There's another card that says, do hillbillies get white privilege too? Yeah. You know, what do those submissions reveal?
Or another card that says, hillbilly is the wrong kind of white. Those submissions were surprising to me. Not the individual submissions, the volume of them. When I put the basket on the table and asked people to share their stories about race, most of our conversations about race in America are by, for, or about people of color, and they fall along that black-white binary that you discussed. But even when that happens, white Americans often have a bit of a bystander status. The conversation is usually led by or targeted at people of color. When I put that basket on the table, I never expected to engage in a 14-year odyssey of listening to white Americans talk about race. That was completely surprising. And in most of the 14 years that we've been doing this work, the majority of the cards have come from white people.
Really?
In America, or we also have cards that come from more than 100 countries, the majority, though, from America. And that was surprising and revealing and rewarding as a journalist, because it helped me understand America in a different way. These are conversations that I normally don't have access to. And as you noted in some of these cards, there's a certain defensiveness sometimes. There's a certain sense that this conversation doesn't include me, and when it does, I'm always made out to be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. May I ask what your race card says?
When I first started doing this, my 6 words were "fooled them all, not done yet."
Oh.
Because I'm a brown girl that grew up in a Midwestern state. I'm from Minnesota. I had a speech impediment as a kid. A life as a communicator was not imagined for me, in part because of who I was and where I came from and how I presented in the world, and I didn't see a track for that. Didn't see, there were no Gwen Eiffels on the air when I was growing up. Over time, my 6 words have changed, and it's in part as America has changed. We're in a hurry to get over this. We want to be post-racial. We want to see the finish line. And I think some form of debate will always be with us because we're just such a variegated country. And so my 6 words now are still more work to be done.
Wow. Michele Norris, the book and the intention behind it are extraordinary. It's called Our Hidden Conversations, What Americans Really Think About Race and Identity. And we also have to credit Kadir Nelson for this extraordinary cover art.
It's really wonderful. And I wanted a book that jumped off the page, so there are lots of photos inside. It's a very vibrant book about a difficult subject.
A real privilege to speak with you. Thank you.